Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlock Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson. We're going to be live today for about 30 to 40 minutes. I have got the amazing Leslie Delp here with me today. And I want to tell you a little bit about Leslie, but first I want to tell you why I have asked Leslie to be on the show. The topic that you're looking at right now, you're probably thinking, gosh, this is a really different topic for Trace to be talking about. Children, the forgotten mourners. It's not the norm for me to talk about a topic like this, but I really, really wanted to have her on the show for two reasons. One is her business story is really fascinating and really interesting, and the fact that she's actually lived her life unlocked, and she's unlocked that special gift inside of her and been able to turn that into a very profitable business. The second reason that I wanted to have her on the show is that this particular topic, as you know, the Unlock Show is all about allowing people to have a opportunity to share what it is that they are passionate about and what they are skilled in. And because Leslie has that skill set, I thought of no better person than to have her on the show talking about this topic. It is a life topic. It is something that we constantly are having to, I suppose, go through, and it's a part of the journey of life. You know, part of our journey of life is that we all exit this world at some time or another. And often we forget about our little people in our lives that are also going through the grief and the loss of a loved one and how to actually deal with that. I was saying to Leslie beforehand, you know, I've sort of looked at the show, the topic, and I was like, you know, how does this fit, and how does this kind of go with the unlocked kind of philosophy? And it was really, I'm a firm believer that you often get given opportunities to talk about things at the right time. So before I kick in and tell you, more about Leslie, because I think you're going to be intrigued and really interested in listening to what she's got to say, because I am. And the conversations her and I had behind the scenes were fascinating. So over the weekend, I happened to be away with my husband for his work, and I was meeting with some of my students in a program that I run where I help them come up with, find the messages within them and be able to share them in a really authentic and confident manner. And over the weekend, I got a phone call or a message from a friend of mine who said, look, Trace, I can't meet with you today because one of my child's best friends, so her child was like 14 years old, his best friend had died, and she was trying to deal with how to deal with her son. And so when this opportunity came up for me to speak with Leslie, it was like, I just have to have her on the show. One, because of her skill in being a very successful businesswoman, but secondly, because this topic is often, the title of the show, The Children, the Forgotten Mourners, often we forget about this. And I just felt, I get goosebumps now because it's like, I must have her on the show. We must talk about this, and we must talk about it now. So now that I've given you a bit of context, given you sort of some reasons as to why I've had her on the show, and it is a little bit out of the norm, but I am so grateful that she is here and that we have the opportunity to talk about this topic and help somebody be able to move through the grief and the mourning process in a really loving and supportive manner. So welcome to today's show, Leslie. It is wonderful to have you here. Her background being a psychologist and specializing in bereavement therapy and some of the things that she's doing really positions her to be the best person to talk about this. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And what an unprecedented time we're in anyway, where there's losses on so many levels. In the very beginning, I tried to teach everyone I could about the bereavement process for children and for adults, because up until just a few decades long, adults didn't know anything about grief and loss. We just really did not understand it. It was the kind of the Jackie Kennedy-esque view of just pick up and move on and don't talk about it. And that we have learned is absolutely the wrong thing to do. So We are now coming full circle and recognizing, with the help of so many in the field finally, that children mourn, and adults who did not get to mourn as children are very, very pain-filled adults. And they have a lot more problems than they ever understood themselves to have, simply because they were never, ever allowed the emotions associated with loss. So this is great that we're going to be able to talk about it today. Healthy.
Absolutely. So let's just sort of go back some time to how this all began. So like your entrepreneurial journey and how you came to be so passionate and so supportive of helping people in this area of their life. How did that come about?
With so many layers, Tracy, layers and layers and layers of the way, in my opinion, the divine, my higher power, my God, he really put my life together so that I got everything I needed as I was growing up to be able to do what I do today. From the point of when I was 3 years old, I fell on a horseshoe spike. It went through my mouth and it missed my brain stem by a fraction of an inch. So I shouldn't even be here, technically. Shouldn't be here. Cut my tongue off. I didn't know if I'd talk ever. And I'm the most talkative person. You'll find that out. But that happened at 3. So I had this sense of I'm here for a purpose very early on. Then I grew up. My parents' best friends owned the town mortuary, the town funeral home. I played in that town funeral home because that was my best friend's house. That's where her apartment was, on the second floor, and the funeral home on the bottom. And we played there, and I didn't know any different. Kids weren't taken to funerals back in the 1960s when I was a kid. So I'd never been to a funeral there. I just only ever went there to play. So I was totally comfortable with funerals and a funeral home. I went to my very first funeral when I was very young. And I went to my very first funeral without my parents when I was in 8th grade, because a friend of mine died and my parents didn't know her. So they felt uncomfortable going. So they took me and I went into the funeral home with my friends. And we all met her parents and shared our stories of her with her parents. But that was an interesting experience for me in 8th grade. I was 13 years old going to my very first funeral, but I wasn't afraid. I guess I'm just an odd person, but I just believed that my comfort level with funerals began very early on because of the fact that I was raised in and around a funeral home. Yeah. And then I just kind of went away from that until I was in my young 20s, and my husband and I were so excited to welcome our very first child, and he died. We were not able to bring that baby home. And the way that they handled it at the hospital was horrible. The doctor said to me, after the surgery, to take care of everything, he said, "Go home and have more." That was all he said. "Go home and have more." And he patted me on the leg, and that was all he said. Wow. I just felt like, okay, there's a missing piece. There's a missing piece here, and I don't know what it is. And everyone around me treated me much the same way. Like, well, something was wrong with that baby. Probably it would have been awful. And so let's just move on. So there we were back in the 60s again. And Christopher, to me, I needed to talk about him. I needed to name him. I needed to discuss what happened and how it all, like one day I was pregnant with Christopher and the next day I wasn't. And so there was just this big void where, I needed to fill it. I felt a calling to fill that void. So it took me a good 15 years. And I went back to school. I had an elementary education degree, and I went back to school, and I told my husband, I want to get a master's in counseling. I don't know why, but I want to. My very first class was a professor who divine, started talking about some techniques in therapy called hypnotherapy with hypnosis and past life regression. I was fascinated by all of it. And I happened to be reading at the time Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying. And he said, well, I can connect you with Kubler-Ross if you want to meet her. She's coming to the campus to speak and you can meet her. So I had the privilege of meeting her. She was like the guru in the field. And just one thing after another kept happening to just solidify my focus in my career. So I have a degree in mental health. I am a mental health therapist. I can take care of all kinds and diagnose all kinds of mental health disorders. I am able to treat all kinds of mental health disorders. And at the time I got my degree, bereavement was not considered a mental health disorder. We now know that complicated bereavement is. We know that PTSD is very closely related. I have studied the brain inside and out to be able to understand why the hippocampus holds on to those triggers. And why we have the kinds of feelings we have related to grief and loss, and to think about the fact that our brain and our physiology is designed to process loss. And we are so willing to pretend that we didn't feel anything or we didn't experience anything as a way of escaping pain in our cultures is just the opposite of what our brain is wired and designed to do. So I have made it my mission just to do a lot of teaching and educating about terms, the process our brain goes through, why our body reacts to loss the way it does, all kinds of loss, not just death. And now I've also taken my elementary education background and woven it into helping adults understand why children process bereavement the way they do, because they have the linear bereavement process that we all go through. And they're experiencing that, but they also have developmental quadrants that they need to meet. There are tasks that they need to meet as they mature. So a 5-year-old, when their father dies, is going to say to you, I want to go to heaven to be with dad. And that is not a threat, I want to kill myself. That is I'm homesick, and as 5 years old, heaven is a place. So I want to go there too. So just teaching all about those different kinds of developmental tasks and the whole process itself and how physiological it is really my passion.
That is just like you talk about, gosh, the divine kind of lining everything up to just down this path. And we talk a lot about on the show, just listening to your inner and going with that. You most certainly did that, and that's led you to be the magnificent person that you are today to help people through this process. So I want to talk a little bit about we've got on here, the misconceptions about children and grief. And, the title of this show being sort of the children or our little people being the ones that are the forgotten mourners. So let's uncover some of the misconceptions. Let's go there first so that we understand what they are. And then what do we do about that?
Right. Well, one of the biggest misconceptions is that if a child isn't crying, then they're fine. And most adults don't want to rock the boat of a child. Let's just take, for an example, if the dad dies. Mom does not want to upset the children at all. The last thing she's going to do is talk about dad because that makes them cry, perhaps, or that makes them angry, perhaps, or they tell her to be quiet. So she's not going to do anything. So she stops talking about dad. And maybe she'll even take the pictures out of the house because it upsets the children. On the flip side, if mom is the one that gets upset by looking at pictures or talking about dad, then the children are going to stop. So just that honest communication of tears are healthy. There are actually anchophalines and leucophalines in the human tear that bathe us in like a Tylenol. We're designed with this incredible composition of a human tear, and tears are healthy and wonderful. And so we don't want to stop tears, but everything in our culture does.
Yeah.
It's like tears are part of the exocrine system. So there are toxins in human tears. And so when we have a good cry, it feels good because we've gotten the toxins out, but we've also bathed ourselves with that natural analgesic that is in those leucophalines. So this was studied at length at the National Eye Institute by Dr. Joyce Brothers. Do you remember Dr. Joyce Brothers? She was a psychologist on the television in the 70s and on the radio. She was very well known. Her husband of 42 years died, and she was broken. And she said, I couldn't understand why I couldn't control my tears. They would come at inopportune times. They would sweep me off my feet. I was embarrassed. I'd be on the show and someone would say something. It would trigger me. I couldn't stop crying. So she went out to the National Eye Institute in the state of Washington and she studied the human tear. And it was a fascinating lecture. I got a chance to meet her as well. And she shared some great stuff about how she processed the loss of that incredible man in her world.
Wow. So in terms of that, because often what we do is compartmentalize. We sort of I'm the adult. This is what I have to do, and the children. Well, I'm going to wrap them, so to speak, in cotton wool. And through our wrapping them in cotton wool, we're actually often doing more damage than good. How do you open that conversation and actually have, build a supportive situation where the both of you can be grieving together? How do you do that? What are some tools? And
that's a great question. And, shows like this help us to get this topic out there, and that's important. And one of the things that we do at the grief center that I began, it's called Olivia's House. There are many grief centers across the country in the United States and around the world. But our grief center in particular, I wrote a program, and every week is a different benchmark for the families to learn. And I did that with that teacher background. So they're all kind of like lesson plans for the families to learn something important. And in week 2, we talk. In week 1, we get to know one another and we learn that we're all in the same boat, only we have different paddles that we're paddling with. But week 2, it's all about our feelings, because most people think all you feel is sad or all you feel is angry. But the truth be told, there is a multitude of feelings. So we talk about all of those feelings. And then in week 3, we talk about memories and how important memories are and how healing memories can be, that they are the treasures of our mind. And then in week 4, we actually take a field trip into a funeral home. And it is the most incredible week with these children. There are no adults allowed, but the children get to go to the funeral home and ask any question of that funeral director that they want to ask. They see a casket. They learn the difference between a coffin and a casket. There is a difference. They learn all about a cremation urn and what the vault looks like, that the cremation urn goes in the ground and that the casket goes in the ground. They learn all about the rituals associated by when they walk in the door, they sign the book with their name, and they learn why that's important. So our field trip to the funeral home is just fabulous. And we've been doing that for over 20 years. And it has never been met with anything but praise. We then, in week 5, we talk about, we bring alumni in to tell their stories, because we believe in making a child a wisdom giver. It hurts to be a victim. It's awful being a victim. So the sooner we can take someone out of the role of victim and make them a victor, make them someone who has knowledge and understanding that they can give to someone else. Like, they walk in the door saying, "Can you help me?" But when they leave, it's like, "Who can I help?" And that's the goal. That's the empowering that family, that they no longer feel like the family that lost their dad. They feel like the family who's going to help another family when they lose their dad. Big difference.
I've got a question here, like in terms of, because often, I suppose what happens is that we don't think about this until such time as we need it. We're in the moment and it's happened.
Right.
So is there it's a really strange question, but should this be something that you do earlier on? Because the reality is it happens, right? You are going to experience, death or passing over at some point in your life. So do you advocate for, getting this information out, as part of the teaching process to a child early on?
Yes, I would say oftentimes a child's first loss is a pet. So you gravitate when you see that experience in front of you. Don't flush it down the toilet. Don't pretend it went to a farm, but embrace the fact that it died. Use all the rituals of the fact that it was a living family member that has died. And use the word dead and use the word died. And we have tons of pet loss books in our lending library. We have our first line of defense is a huge lending library of resources. So we have over 1,800 different books and resources written on the topics of death of all kinds and loss of all kinds. So we give them a pet loss book and we talk about how they can have ritual of a funeral, how they can go about creating some kind of memory that is attached to that for the child. And we have a program called Barkley's Gone. That's actually a pet loss program about Barkley, the dog that has died. And we will go right in the schools. When we find a kindergarten class that has a lot of kids that have had the experience of pet loss, we go right in that classroom and we do Barkley's Gone right in the classroom for them. We do have teaching units for any teacher who experiences death in the school, and we walk them through everything. And again, in our community, everyone knows Olivia's house like they know Ronald McDonald. They just know who we are, what we do. It wasn't always that way, but we've been there 20 years and it touches all socioeconomic levels. So the richest of the rich in our community to the poorest of the poor have walked through our doors. And yes, the sooner we can talk about death and explain loss. Divorce is huge. And on a stress scale, divorce outweighs death. It is harder for a child to process the death of their family than it is to process the death of their parent.
Yeah, wow.
It is.
I mean, having that skill, or that experience, and that, because it really is an experiential journey that you're taking them on so that they know what to expect and how to navigate that should this situation occur. Do you find, because what I find interesting about this, the things that you're talking about, I grew up in New Zealand. So in New Zealand, my culture, Māori culture, has a very specific way of dealing with death. And so my first memories of, going to funerals, or we call them tangi or tangihana, it is very, we do it in a very particular way. Yeah. And a lot of the things that it's really fascinating to me because that's what I know to be my life, and that's the way that we did it. So as a small child, you would be very much immersed in the entire process. Wow. But then hearing you explain this from a non, I suppose, my non-cultural perspective, this makes total sense to me as to why we certainly dealt with the process of the passing over in the particular way that we did, with all family coming together, being a very small child. Yeah. Some people might think, well, when I'm about to sort of share, it's like, well, what? With us going to what we call marae, so a place of mourning, with the body in the casket, open casket, and you sleep with that body with the rest of your family members for 3 days. And there's an entire process with that. But all the things that you're talking about, what I'm finding fascinating is that, a lot of that cultural thing that we do is very much what you're describing. And it certainly does help in that entire grieving process. So as a young person, you're not frightened of it.
Absolutely.
It's not a bad thing. It's part of life and death.
And I find that the children who are frightened, who come in the door and they're very timid and they're not sure of what to expect, it's because their parents were not educated or allowed any privilege of any of those rituals. So they're very nervous, and that just, it just pours right onto the child. So our first line of defense is really to get the parent comfortable. So we do an intake with the parent first, and we spend a lot of time with that parent learning about them and what has happened in their life, and then learning about their children. And then we meet the children later. And a lot of times we'll know that they've been traumatized. So we send them to a one-on-one trauma specialist that I've trained in bereavement along with their clinical background. So we have art therapists, we have music therapists, we have play therapists for our real young children. We have a wonderful equine team with this big farm of horses that are incredible with grieving families who've been traumatized. Have you ever heard about equine therapy?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay. We use that so often. It's very effective, very effective. And we have what's called walk and talk, because there are male grievers and female grievers. So if you are more of a male griever, you don't want to look at people. You like to kind of walk and have somebody walking beside you talking, but you don't want to have to look at somebody as you share your pain. A female griever or a female mourner does it in a circle. We call it spears and bowls. So doing it in a circle means I'll sit in a group and I'll look across the circle at you and I'll tell you my story. And I'm totally comfortable with that. So it's very interesting. Walk and talk allows a male griever, most often a man, but not always, to just kind of walk in the woods with the therapist alongside, doing the work right alongside the therapist. And that is very, very effective for teenage boys and young adult boys. Very effective form of therapy. So we get them into some of these wonderful trauma therapies before they're actually ready to come into a group experience with other children, teenagers, young adults, or adults. Yeah, it's a process, again, a very well-defined process that's taken us about 20 years to truly perfect, but it is amazing what the results have been.
It is fantastic. I want to go back to, there's a couple of things that you mentioned early on, and you were talking about how that there is, you can clearly see or the impacts that adults have later in life because they haven't dealt with the grief that they experienced as a young person. I want to know, because there will be many, many millions of people walking around carrying that level of grief and not even realizing that what they're experiencing is grief that they've actually haven't been able to deal with from many, many years ago. So what are some of the, let's help people understand and maybe recognize some of the signs that they may be experiencing delayed or continued grief that is impacting on their life as an adult.
Great point. Okay, so there's a major difference between grief and depression. And when you're looking to make a diagnosis of, will this be helped by medication? Because grief is not. Depression is, because it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Grief is just your processing, your detachment of all of those memories and all of that love. You're just kind of learning how to reframe it. And medication doesn't help you with that. Time and sitting in your pain and working through your pain is what helps you with that. But some of the ways that they are similar, okay, and can get confused is this. They both present with a lack of energy. They both present with appetite disturbances. You're either really hungry all the time or you're not hungry at all. They both present with somatic illnesses like headaches and shoulder aches. Your arms ache when you've lost a baby. Sometimes your arms even ache. Your stomach is upset. You might have issues with all kinds of stomach ailments. These are all somatic, so they're very related to the processing of the loss. They both present with a level of joy disturbance, meaning you walk around and not much brings you joy. You have intermittent joy with grief and loss. With depression, there's very low level flat affect and not much joy at all that you can ever see from someone. That's a big trigger for me. When I talk about their children or grandchildren and they light up and they can talk about them and then they immediately go back down, I'm encouraged by that. The big question and the big difference is this. With grief and loss, you feel hopeful. You want to know there's going to be an end. And I'm asked all the time, how long is this going to be? How long am I going to be like this? Can you just give me a calendar date? I'll work towards it. With depression, there is a hopeless and helpless feeling. And they will use the word hopeless and helpless. And there is a loss of a sense of identity with grief and loss. When I lost Christopher, I didn't know if I was still a mom. Okay. With depression, there is a loss of sense of self. And I knew I was Leslie Delp, but I didn't know if I was Christopher's mother anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So those are the key features to be able to distinguish if you're a therapist and you're working with someone and you're trying to determine what diagnosis to make. Those are the things I'm looking for. With children, there are some other developmental tasks in there as well. We see a lot of that, but we see also some developmental tasks that say, no, that's natural for a child to experience that, even though that doesn't seem natural for you. But the biggest thing I want to say about the two is you can have a clinical depression after you lose a loved one. So let's just say a lot of folks have a mental health predisposition. You know, depression runs in my family. So I'm predisposed to that. So when I go through tough times, I know that I might dip down into a bout of depression. And medication will help that for me, but it will not take away the pain. I'm still going to feel the pain of my loss, and I still have to slow down, turn inward, and face that pain and feel it. Mm-hmm. You got to feel it to heal it. Mm-hmm. And so much of our culture, I don't care where you are in the globe, is all about not feeling pain and rushing through it and hurrying up. And you'll find people that begin the process of bereavement, especially after the death of a child, they will get very active in a cause that relates to how their child died. Mm-hmm. And a good example of this was Candy Leitner with Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Yes. She got swept up in that. They had her on Capitol Hill testifying within months of the death of her child. And this huge movement of Mothers Against Drunk Drivers took over. And she never got to sit in her pain. And years later, she crashed and burned because of it. She deserved the right to be in pain. And we teach our parents, especially those who've lost children, you cannot skip from the beginning where you're a zombie and you don't feel anything, clear right to the end of the process, which is called reconstruction, where you live your life with their legacy taking them with you. There are two very important components in the middle of this process. One being feeling all the feelings. Now that your brain has allowed you to feel things, it's done protecting you. Now you're feeling the pain. And most people, when they feel the pain, they use drugs, alcohol, shopping, sex, you name it, to numb the pain. And they jump right back to the beginning of feeling very zombie-like. And that's better than feeling the pain because it's very, very intense. But if you move through that pain, you will move through to what I call assimilation, where you assimilate that person into your life and you take them into who you are and you become a person that's changed because they were in your life. And they are never, ever, ever gone when you assimilate them into who you are. Christopher would be 40 years old this year. He has lived every day of his life through me because I learned early on how to assimilate him. I didn't accept, which is a word I do not like. I don't want to accept that he died and didn't have a lifetime, but I can assimilate him into my lifetime. I assimilated him into my other children's lifetimes. My husband has assimilated him into his lifetime. And then when you assimilate and you say, who am I now? You're getting to answer that question that you can see with grief, which is, who am I now without this person? Okay, as opposed to who am I? Does that make sense?
That absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's our natural process, Tracy. That's a natural process built in us. Can't stop it. It will happen. You can keep it from happening if you get addicted to your negative coping strategies. You can. It's the only way.
So the next part of, I suppose, the next logical thing with that question is, once you have identified that, okay, maybe this is not depression I'm going through, it's unresolved.
Yeah.
What should somebody do?
Oh, that's a great question. I just can't say it enough. Reach out to the specialists, the help that is in your community, the people. There might be support programs out there. There might be clinical folks who have specialized in bereavement. It is important for you to find the specialists, because if you had a cancer of the lungs, You wouldn't go to someone who specialized in heart surgery. You wouldn't go to someone who specialized in kidney tumors. You would go to a cancer of the lung specialist. And so that is what you need to seek out and search out, is someone who understands the process of bereavement. And luckily, we are now getting to the place where the professionals are finally learning enough, and they are those specialists out there who understand the difference between mental health and bereavement, and when it gets complicated and can become a mental health issue. And that's what we want. There are some wonderful self-help programs. There's some great people online doing a lot of work online, a lot of virtual things being done these days. So you don't even have to have that person in your hometown, which is a blessing. And I will tell you, anybody who needs to find support, you can contact Olivia's house. And we make it our business to help you find support.
Well, let me just pop that up on the screen so that everybody's got knows exactly where to go. And as Leslie has said, this is something that Olivia's house can help you no matter where you are in the world. So if you need some assistance with, helping to move through your grief, and this is the place to go to. I also want to ask this question because I opened the show with the fact that I have somebody who is very special in my community who is going through a situation at the moment. And I want to ask a couple of questions. I'm hoping that she'll actually watch this. And if she doesn't, I will tag her later so that she can listen and maybe get a bit of assistance on how to deal with things. But as we go through life, death comes in all sorts of different forms, right? Sometimes we're old, we're young, we're teenaged. And, we've talked about the little ones, and we've talked about, as an adult, what do we do? Then there's the middle age, the teenage years, where often, I don't know about you, but as a teenager, I had friends of mine at school that we lost through all sorts of different situations. But when you are the mother of a child who has lost their best friend through whatever the situation may be, as the mother of that child, how do you help them move through this time of grief?
Well, they have some basic needs, the teenagers, and what we call the spiritual intuitive quadrant. Okay, so they've got these developmental needs. Some of the most important needs are they will want to be with their friends. They tell their story to each other. They support each other in a way that teenagers do. We all remember it. They're like family to one another. And that's how they mourn. They mourn with family, and their family are their friends. So don't be insulted when they want to have their friends around them, when they want to go be with their friends. That's definitely a developmental task, and thumbs up for that. The other thing is keep lines of communication open. You can just say, we're going to do a check-in every day, 1 to 5. I want you to give me a number. You don't have to even explain it. 1 being, I don't want to talk about anything. 5 being, I got something important to tell you. And if you say, I'm feeling 3 today, Mom, that means I'm good to go. Just some kind of a meter where you don't need him to go into a lot of explanation. I would also say plan opportunities to get in a car with that child. A teenager in a car is a captive audience, and you're looking forward to and driving, and that gives them permission to say what they think and feel, because you can't react because it's unsafe for you to react, and you're trained not to react. So you're just going to be driving ahead, and you're going to take it all in. And I would say take it all in, and then let them talk as much as they can, and then come up with other questions and conversations later. But this is going to give you a great insight when you get in a car with a kid who's struggling through a loss. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. And that's a great strategy in being able to help support that teenager through that situation. So thank you for that.
Something that's happened in the last 15 years, and I was a big proponent of this. I almost feel like I pushed this in my community, but tattooing has become a real way that kids honor the memories of, their friends who have passed. And who have died, and they really do take to heart the kind of ink they get for these kiddos. And I had to have been in the early 90s. I had a young boy, his brother completed suicide, and he just didn't know how to express his grief because it was really not very talked about back then. I've made a major difference in my community. We are very educated now, but he was very uncomfortable with that. So he went and got a tattoo of his brother's signature on his chest. And his mom came to me and she's like, oh my gosh, you'll never guess what Tony did. I'm so upset. And I talked her down and said, that is his way of connecting with his brother. It's fine. It's fine. So they may want to, ink. They may want to write music. We had the most incredible song written by a young man whose father completed suicide, and he wrote a beautiful song. And again, the divine happened because he came in to play it for me, and I had all this stuff going on, and I didn't have enough time on my calendar to even, get the time to hear it. We have a recording studio in our grief center, so the kids can come in and record music if they want. And he wanted to record it, so I came up and we recorded it, and it just so happened it was his dad's birthday. And this is a kid who was so angry at his father for ending his life. He couldn't see straight. He was so angry. But through the program and through time, he was able to process everything that happened, that it was a mental illness, that this was not a choice. This was a mental illness. His father had a brain that wasn't healthy. That's why he did this. If he had a healthy brain, he would have never done that, which is what we teach. We teach all about a healthy and an unhealthy brain. And so, kids do all kinds of things and come up with great ways to mourn. Yes. And the best thing we can do is try to support them. Now, they will use drugs and alcohol because it's available. So to teach them as quickly as we can that when you're feeling no feelings in the beginning of this process, it feels really good because it's not painful. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and that pain is like a jagged knife. And it's like overnight it happens and they don't understand it. So they resort to what they know works to take away pain. And that's why we have the dilemmas we have right now around the globe with so much addiction, is that when families were breaking up in the 70s, 80s, we didn't talk about it. And those kids learned how to use substances to deal with the pain of dad moving out, getting a new family, not having anything.
Camouflage it. Yeah, as best you can, and we know now that causes all sorts of problems further down the track. Yeah. I mean, one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, Leslie, is I'm noticing that there are some words that you use that are quite different to the words that we often hear in society. And the word completed was a word that I picked up as you were talking. Yeah. So I know that and this was part of our conversation sort of backstage, was you talking about some of the words and the languaging that we use around death. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, first of all, I love when anyone is comfortable with the word death. Dead, died, dead. Passed on,
moved over.
Yeah, we lost him. There's a book called Finding Grandpa Everywhere because this little 10-year-old was told, I'm sorry you lost your grandpa, by someone at the funeral. And he didn't understand, well, where did grandpa go then? So, we need to use the word dead, died. We have to use the word completed suicide. And it is so important, and thank you for bringing this up and catching on so quickly, Tracy. It's just that we're also conditioned to saying commit suicide. But commit is a negative word. We used to be committed to an asylum. We commit a crime. We commit adultery. It's all so negative. So to commit suicide is just one more layer of judgment. So once we recognized that the act of suicide is an act that is completed with an unhealthy brain, a brain that has a disease, the disease of depression. It frees us to take away all these judgments It used to be in the 4th century, we thought that if we judged and punitively acted, people would stop, that they had a choice. And we now know so much more. And so when you say completed, you either attempt to suicide or you complete suicide. So that's how I look at it. That's how I teach it. You complete suicide, you completed. You can say they suicided, they died by suicide, his father ended his life. Any of those words would be less judgmental than commit. Okay. I also want to explain the difference between grief and mourning, because those are interchangeably used. Grief is everything we feel on the inside. All the emotions, everything from the guilt to the anger to the relief, because maybe they weren't a good person. All the feelings, everything on the inside. When they go public for people to see by virtue of sharing them, crying, telling your story, writing them, wearing black, going to the grave, anything where you are acting upon those feelings on the inside, you are mourning. And mourning is so healthy. We work for mourning. We work to allow children to mourn. We want them to get everything to the outside. When it stays on the inside and you fight it to keep it on the inside, that's when the trouble begins. That's when it's necessary to use those substances that are negative, that will lead you down a road that you don't have enough energy for. So using the term mourning and telling children you have a right to mourn and you need to mourn for health is a real important piece of education.
This has been such a blessing of a conversation to be having. And as I, like I said to you right at the beginning, as when our show producer presented this to me and I sort of, I realized you were like the person that I needed to be talking to, invite you on the show. I was sort of like, okay, this is going to be an interesting topic for me to go down the path of with the Unlock show. But boy, I'm so glad that we had this, because it has opened my, how do I put this? It's like opened the scope of what should be spoken about, right? Because unlock, living your life in a way that you are unlocked to be able to talk about anything, and also linking what you're passionate about with your life's work. And that's exactly what like, I love this because that's exactly what you have done. And often we don't talk about this subject. We don't talk about death. I even use throughout this passing over, because the words that we have become accustomed to using in society, because they are supposed to be softer and not so so bold and in your face, and to be, let's soften the blow so that people don't have to deal with their, you don't have, then it allows them not to have to deal with their grief and their feelings, when in fact we need to be very much, tell it like it is, say it like it is, that is what has happened. Now let's work through the journey of dealing with the grief on the inside to then mourning on the outside. And I love that whole getting it out, the grief being on the inside, getting it out of you so that you can actually deal with it and be able to move forward with it on the outside.
So healthy. It's what our brain is designed to do. And I will say this too: there are a lot of people that have been trained with regards to PTSD. That when you have these triggers, that I get a panic attack, and my training is make your panic attack your friend. Make it say, "Come on in, I got you. We're fine, and name it. Lucille, come sit beside me because we're just fine. We're not going to panic here." And the bottom line here is, we have to embrace the triggers as a way to understand our brain is at work. It's at work healing. When we feel triggers, it's protecting us. So we've got a healthy brain protecting us when we feel those things, as opposed to, even in the last couple of years, we've been saying that when you suffer from PTSD and you have panic attacks, oh my gosh, we want to try to, get to that PTSD root so we don't have a panic attack. And the bottom line is, when we understand that this is a healthy brain at work, it really takes that edge off, and we don't find ourselves in that panic attack when we embrace the knowledge of, oh, thank heavens, my brain is working. It's working in a great, healthy way, and I'm going to be just fine.
There's another thing that I wanted to talk about, because I know that you have written a book.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to be able to get their hands on that, because,
yes.
Given the importance of this conversation, and it's not going to go away. Death is just part of the process of, the life and the journey that we have. But the way in which we can deal with the situation, deal with the journey of that, can be, we can either take that on board, and as we discussed today, you can keep it inside and not deal with it, and it then becomes a problem for you later in life, or you can actually deal with it and it just becomes assimilated into your life.
That's
and
right.
allowing you to have that and continue to have that person as part of your life now and forever.
And
So
you become a wisdom giver. You become a wisdom giver. You become someone who is able to help another person. And what a legacy for your loved one. What a legacy for Christopher. He didn't have a lifetime, but he has done so much in what was his lifetime without even having a day on earth. And I will say, in this book, it's called Logan's First Funeral. There is a glossary that has very specific child-centered terms. So we define dead, we define cremains, we define cemetery, we define the word headstone and urn. We talk all about these in the book, Logan's First Funeral, within the context of the story. But in the back of the book, there is an actual glossary of defined terms for adults and children. There's a letter to the adult in the world of the child, whether that's a grandparent or a parent, whoever's reading that book, they can read the letter first to understand how and why would read the book to the child. And more importantly, the illustrations in this book are so beautiful. And they were drawn by my very dear friend, who is an artist, who also worked at Olivia's house, helping me to raise all the money, because not one penny do parents, families spend to come to Olivia's house, not one penny. When they walk through our door, they are totally our responsibility, and we take care of them without any cost to them, no matter what it takes. So get this book, because that helps us keep our doors open.
Hold that book up. Let's and let me just do this so that we can get a decent view on this. So Logan's First Funeral, and we'll make sure that in the comment section that there is a place that you can go. And in fact, it's already here. So it is. Let me just find it and pop it on here. Here we go. Put it on here. See if we can grab it up. If you head on over to Amazon, you'll be able to purchase the book. Look up Logan's First Funeral by Leslie Delp, and you'll also be able to get your hands on that, and you'll be supporting such an amazing, what an amazing legacy you are building. It's just fantastic. This has been, like I said, it's been such a pleasure to have a conversation with you. Let me just do this too. Such a pleasure to have this conversation with you today. And I want to thank you so much for showing up at just the right time, right?
Yes,
just the right time.
There are no coincidences. These are God's little kisses to us. He connects just who he needs to connect to get his message out there to take care of his children. And you are amazing. You are just amazing, and thank you for having me and for helping me to get Logan's First Funeral out there to the world, because this is a resource that there is no other resource like this. So I'm thrilled that you helped me with that. So thank you, Trace.
Oh my gosh, you are so welcome. Like I said, and you showed up at exactly the right time. And I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for everything that you are doing. Your mission is amazing. And I want to, we'll have a bit of a chat backstage and see how we can continue to support what it is that you are doing. So I want to say thank you to everybody for watching today. For those of you you who want to reach out to Leslie, those of you who need her assistance and want some more support, whether it's now or in the future, let me just pop back up where you can go. So it's Olivia's House.
Mm-hmm.
.org. Go and find her there, and then of course go and buy the book Logan's First Funeral, and we will be supporting a absolutely fantastic cause. And for now, guys, I want to say thank you so much for joining another episode of Unlocked with me, Tracy Wilson. I'm going to be back again this Friday, Brisbane time, 10 a.m., which is Brisbane, Australia, I should say, time at 10 a.m. for another episode. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to take, that message, like what's been intriguing to me. And I love this because Leslie is one of those people, I talk about this all the time. Every single one of you has something burning inside of you, a message to share, something that you are passionate about. And if I can help you in some way, shape, or form, connect that message to make it your life's purpose and to make it how you make your living, then that is my purpose in life. That is the mission that I am on. So if I can do that and I can help you, please reach out to me. Let me know that that's what you want to do, and I will help you, even if I have to do a session with you for free, to help you get past your own self and help you see that that is possible for you to be able to do exactly what Leslie has done today. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for all watching, and I'll see you again for another episode of Unlocked with Tracy Wilson this Friday at 10 a.m. So bye for now, and live your life unlocked, because as you know, there is just no other way. Bye for now.
Thank you.